and this is Tom Byers speaking to you from my home in Tokyo, Japan, which is around 1 o'clock a.m. in the morning here on Monday, actually going into Tuesday. So I'm really very happy to introduce my very good friend Michel Bruyninckx, who is a Belgium, who has got incredible experience working at every single level of football, including even outside of football, even challenged children with mental disabilities. And let me just pull up something right here. The other day, Arsene Wenger, who's basically the technical so-called expert for FIFA today, right? This is the headlines from FIFA coming out today. This is what it says. Arsene Wenger on the future of football. The next step is to train a player's brain. So the reality is that FIFA believes that we've kind of crossed the pinnacle of technical development of how good physically players can become. And now FIFA is exploring this whole idea about the brain. How can on the elite side at least, how can we make players better? So today we're gonna have this presentation from Michel. I came in contact with Michel several years ago when I was invited by UEFA to present to all of the technical directors. I believe, Michel, it was in Geneva. And I did my presentation of Football Starts at Home, which at the time was like 1.0. Today, we're much more further advanced. And Michel was one of the first big supporters of our program. And from that collaboration, we kept in touch, and Michel has wrote a part of our book, Football Starts at Home. And also I've done some work together, standing on the pitch for more than almost 10 days to 2 weeks in Lugano, Switzerland. So I'm going to pass it over to Michel, but you're going to hear some incredible information about brain development, about how we can train players, not just on the technical side, but on the kind of brain side of football, that I think that will be challenging. Some things that you will hear that you might agree or disagree with, but you have to keep an open mind, because a lot of people are listening to what Michel is doing, and he's worked with Pep Guardiola at Barcelona. He's worked at AC Milan. He's worked around the world. So I'm going to pass it over to Michel, and he's going to take us through the presentation. So Michel, there you go.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Thank you, Paul. Hello to everyone. It's a real honor, and I'm very thankful I can present my ideas through this webinar. And I have to confirm that meeting Tom was an enormously important experience, because what he is doing will have an influence on development of football. Okay.
Physical condition. I don't believe in that. Huh? So physical condition for itself don't exist from my point of view. So the mind is controlling everything, what you have to do on the pitch, when you have the ball, when you don't have the ball, how you defend the set pieces, many circumstances, and not about the physical. So they are young, they train every day, we take care of them. That is impossible in terms of the physios, all the departments that we have. Absolutely everything for them. So I don't believe in that. So why the first half was low, the second half we were so quick and were so aggressive, it could be the opposite. So when you're tired, it's always mental approach.
Okay, it is Pep Guardiola who puts us on the road to the brain. Now, if we look a little bit around in world football, you will see that many of the absolute top players confirm the importance of the brain. Here we have Xavi Hernandez, we have Andrea Pirlo, and they all tell us Football is played with the head. Your legs are just the tools. And many times, and there was research on what the Barcelona players were doing. Then I have to go back in time 4 or 5 years. Xavi Hernandez, Iniesta were checked in that way. And what Xavi is telling us here, speed is often confused with insight. When I start running earlier than the others, I appear faster. And it is explained by the fact, and what he is telling is correct, because his brain was scanned. He is thinking at a speed of, let's say, 150 miles an hour compared with others 80 miles an hour. So it is important that for the future game, for the children we are preparing to play the future game, that we are aware of the fact that the technical speed has to go up, and also the decision making. Okay, now the last few days, someone was in the middle of interest, and it goes about Julian Nagelsmann. He is a brain coach in football. Today he's still working for Leipzig, but Bayern Munich had to pay 25 million euros to contract him. And it is Julian, and this is a coincidence, because my connection with Germany today is actually going through Hoffenheim. And Julian started as a youth coach in Hoffenheim. And for him, there the story starts. So he also says, you have to try to increase the cognitive speed in your players, allowing players to react faster to a changing situation on the field. As a result, the brain is trained more than feet and legs. So this is the tendency today in Europe. I'll guide you a little bit to the background of brain functioning, so a little bit theory. And one of the most important questions is, do we memorize what we are learning? Because memorizing is equal to expertise. And this is very, very important, because we all thought for many years that what we are doing on the pitch, well, our players memorize all that very well. And that's a dangerous thing. So in this presentation, the first thing I want to do is to give you an idea about how do we learn. And then we come close to neuroscience in football, the tip of the veil. What I'm doing with my method is we try to develop the intelligent players. And developing an intelligent player means make them play faster and think faster. One of my references is the player that broke Maradona's record, Dries Mertens. I had him about 5 years. I've coached him about 5 years. And still today, he is referring to me, because he actually confirms that the way I've worked with him, and all the credits go to him because I don't play the matches, but he said, you added something to my skills nobody ever did. So that is very important. Oh, what's happening? Okay, here I'm back. So neuroscience in football, watch out, because I'm also a computer scientist. Normally, when we set up some algorithm or programs, we reason from the idea the input determines the output. So now you need to know that in a human being, a part of the information is already present. We do not arrive in this world without a starter's kit. We already have, from evolution, some information in our brain that will influence our decisions and learning. So first, check that the brain is sufficiently organized to learn optimally. That means normally we should have to screen children before they start playing football, and forget the innate talent. The processing of the information that arrives in the brain must proceed according to the functioning of the brain. And this is something we ignore too much. We immediately thought we have to compose some programs. The contents of these programs is perfect, but we didn't check if our program was matching with the brain functioning. And then I will show you the output is often influenced by the brain. To give you an idea, so our fallible thinking, here I offer you a visual illusion, because when you look to the picture, and I would ask you which circle in the middle is the largest, you all will think the one at the right is the largest. Actually, there is no difference between the two circles in the middle, because the circle surrounding the circle in the middle is influencing your perception. I know it's weird, you can even measure it yourself, but there is no difference in size between those two circles in the middle. So one of the first things you have to put in your mind is we see with our brain, not with our eyes. Now you could think, okay, this will never have an influence on sports performance. Now I put the same idea in a sports environment. Here you will see the influence of the divergent image, and luckily every disadvantage sometimes becomes an advantage. So what did we do? We asked some golf players to play the game. And we took the small hole, and through projectors, we brought big circles around the small hole and small circles. So again, when those players are looking to the hole, they perceive different things, because the ones who had to perform on the hole with the big circles, they got the impression that the hole was smaller, and the other ones with the small circles, they got the impression, oh, the hole is bigger. So in this research, the golf players had to put in the two holes of the same size. And what happened, you already, and I've put it on the slide, you can already guess it, the score percentage in the first hole was 10% higher. It's simply because your brain adapts the size of the hole. It's not only happening when you're in a sports environment. Also, I'll show you now a cognitive illusion. What did we do in a meeting room of teachers? We have put a picture of flowers on the wall in front of a table where we had a ball. The teachers could throw some money in it when they were drinking a coffee. And the explanation was they had to support, they had to contribute to social action. So as long as the flowers were on the wall, there was actually not happening a lot. Many teachers would throw a lot of money in the ball. But the moment we changed from the flowers to the eyes, well, those stern eyes made it possible that more money got into the ball. So we had what we call a behavioral adjustment. And again, we were not aware of it. So the question is, if we understand all that, what can disrupt, slow down, and misrepresent the information processing of the brain of a child, a player? Well, it is more than the two things I've already showed. It goes about reflex residues. It can go about stress, a lack of cooperation between the two parts of your brain, the two hemispheres, delayed biological and mental maturity, emotional disorders, poor brain timing, not being aware that we all have a chronotype, so we are all influenced by our individual biological rhythm, and we can have weak executive functions, especially cognitive and motor inhibition. This means we are not able to control our impulses. And also the fact, and now it already comes back, watch out for the working memory. Now, if you would screen children and you can eliminate most of those problems, well, these kids can also have the potential to go to the top. This means we organize a screening and to empower actually the idea. If you only worked with the so-called talents, you could not bring a team together, because when we do the screening, most of the kids have one of the problems. And then it's interesting to find out that someone like Johan Cruyff told us, as a boy, I had no sense of my talent. I was always allowed to join an older group. Back then, there was no question of me being the best or feeling that way. I was the youngest and I had to fight every time to get in, to stay with it, to fit in, and that fight basically never stopped. So one of the biggest players in this world, he has been one of the biggest players, tells us, I never had the feeling to be so talented. I simply had to have the grit. And if we go now to a present-day situation, we have the AZ University, AZ Alkmaar in Germany is next to Ajax Amsterdam, one of the best teams in Holland. They also work a lot on the brain, and they wanted to know who is going to make the first team. So they wanted to check what players from our academy go to the first team. And what did they find out? Well, we still give too much priority to the early matured. And they found out that actually 61% of the late matured finally arrived in the first team. If I compare with what is still happening in my own country, and I look to our national selection under 14, well, most of those players are still early mature players. You can see 75% early mature. So there is something wrong in our selection strategy. Okay, now we go to the method itself. How do we learn? And what is absolutely fundamental? The focus. You can do whatever you want. You can organize many training sessions, but if you are not backed up by the mental and cognitive elements in the brain, your results will be very poor. Focus is the key for access of learning. And then you need to keep in mind that there are 4 pillars: attention, concentration, orientation, active engagement. Children have to be involved. It starts, you will see in the next slide, I'll explain more. It starts with curiosity. Then you have to make it possible they make errors. We all think everything has to go smoothly. Oh no, the more mistakes they make, the more errors they make, the better they are actually learning. But then they need immediate feedback. And to consolidate all that, you need to be aware of that sleeping will have an influence on it. And also, and it goes back to what I already said, memorizing. So learning is an ongoing mix of cognition, emotion, mental, and motor skills. So what is now the contents of MBM? So the learning principles of MBM, or the MBM methodology, is based on recognition, prime decision making. So if you can go to the brain, if you match in organizing your training sessions, your programs, according to the functioning of the brain, you will guarantee that what they have to see, what they have to understand, will be recognized in a faster way. And they are going to prime all that. So they will make use of that in a faster way than other players. Now, what's covered in this demo training? So I've put in this chart most of the characteristics of my methodology. And you will see it starts with curiosity, grit, growth mindset, focus, alertness, flow, conscious and aerobic movement orientation. And here I already have to say, watch out, it has to be aerobic, because if there is not enough oxygen in the brain, the learning will be very poor. Visualizing, thinking, let them make mistakes and correct them continuously. A fixed context with patterns, because the brain is a pattern machine. Repetitions, variations, and adjustments. Not only repetitions, also dangerous. Retrieval structures, they have to connect what they are learning to the environment. Chunking, bring things together that it delivers significant grouping. Memorizing. Decision-making, the executive functions. I'm also working in the school system. This is enormously important because in today's school programs, they pay more and more attention to the executive functions. Then, didactically, and this is based on thousands of researchers, we actually organize all our drills using two principles. 80, that means, and I will explain more about it, explicit direct instruction, followed by self-regulation and autonomous learning. This is enormously important. We have to step back as coaches. And to tell you one more thing, the project I have today in Switzerland, our 15, 16 years old players are now coaching and training the younger kids, 10, 11, 12 years old. And this is actually guiding them to autonomous learning and implementing their knowledge while they are working with other teams. Positive feedback, success experience, synchronization, cooperation, very important. Dynamic thinking, never start thinking, now I know it all, now it's perfect. Test yourself, or let them test themselves and let them coach others. Mental representations, also a big issue scientifically today. And then the consolidation, sleep, memory, interleaving and spacing. But I will tell you a little bit more about interleaving and spacing, because watch out. Spacing means if you constantly or constant rehearsal first gives the impression that the learned is haunting. By constantly rehearsing, you mainly use your short-term memory. Struggling to hold information and retrieve it later after distraction via an intermediate command will cause the information to be transferred from short-term memory to long-term memory. So it's weird, but frustration is not a sign that you're not learning, whereas convenience is. The best learning path is slow, and poor performance at first is essential for better performers later on. So immediate good performance is not equal to a learning process. I know this is weird, but it's proven by science in your own country. Interleaving, now you have to think of the technical skills you offer them. Varied or mixed learning, this means practicing different skills interchangeably or constantly changing the execution of a skill, so changing the ball size, available space. Interleaving improves the ability to link the right skill or strategy to a problem or match situation, because one of the major influences on football or soccer is unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. So now we put the past opposite to the future. What we did in the past, we call this cognitive covering. There is an explanation, because through brain research, the fact we can now go into the brain, and through imaging, we can see what's happening. We understand in a better way how we can make use of the power of the brain. So the cognitive covering stands against what we do today. That means set children on their way to discover themselves, connections, insights, structures, skills. And there, the two learning strategies will come back. So the explicit direct instruction and autonomous learning. If I go to the past, what caused so many weak performances? Well, it's because we are very strong, or we concentrate on very strong and early specializing. We only train defined skills. We avoid the continuous variability of a task. We narrow many times the focus of the brain. Imagine, or to give it an example, the single focus on the ball, hindering the development of creativity, and we fall into endless repetitions. If we go to the future, it goes about what is called abstract thinking. That means give them the opportunity, give the players, the children, the opportunity to find connections, insights, structures, because here it's shown by the Raven test. And if you look very well, the only thing you have to do is to follow what's happening with the different structures. So the black box is moving. It's very important that you develop all that more in the brain of a child, of a player, than what we did in the past. So the importance of autonomous learning. It comes out of the United States. In her book, Limitless Mind, Professor Jo Bohler states, children in cooperation. Their progress was due to the fact that they took the time to explain the substance to others, which is one of the best opportunities for children, students, to understand it even better themselves. So when children start to teach, to coach others, you will not believe, because Mrs. Bohler can explain it, you will not believe what's going to happen. The learning effect will be many, many times bigger. And you can check all that. I added the two researchers, one connected with PISA, so the collaborative problem solving, and then the neural basis of cooperation and competition. Okay, nice to explain all that. Now I have to give you the solution. So we always start with explicit direct instruction, and then we go to autonomous learning. And watch out, because in China, they are also, and I'm involved in the reorganization of Chinese football as well, we are also concentrating on the impact of implicit and explicit learning. And actually, with what I'm doing, I confirm what the Chinese have found in their research. We start with explicit direct instruction. This means first, learn them a sequence of skills. Organizing and structuring problems requires a mature prefrontal cortex. This means this is the part of the brain, the front part of the brain, and that's only full grown around 25 years old. So it's unbelievable that we didn't know that. We all thought at the age of 15, 16 years old, they can already make very good decisions. Actually, in their brain, they are not equipped to do all that. And that's the reason we first have to put them on the road, guide children in this and give positive feedback. And then we put them in another situation, autonomous learning, let the players project what they have learned in the explicit directive instruction phase. Let them project the AD assignment in a constantly changing context. Support the search for solutions, encourage cooperation, give positive feedback, vary and adjust the execution if everything runs too smoothly. That is what Nagelsmann, also the new coach of Bayern Munich, does. When he gets the impression, now they master it, he stops it and he changes the contents. So here you can see in this picture, how do we actually integrate it in our training sessions? Well, we put the players in structures across. If you follow 80, you will see there is a cross, and the players will start at the right side of the cone at the outside, and in the middle they run to the left. And every time they change from one position to another, the perception of the environment will change. You can see how the blue box is going around. That's the first step. Then when we ask them, and they go into autonomous learning to do this from left to right, you will see that the changing of the perception will again happen, but in a different way. And this is enormously important, because when you organize your drills in this way, you also have an influence on perceptual learning, because you teach them to look around and to screen the environment continuously from different angles. Second part, okay, the practice, knowledge of learning. The practice for all children and all ages, because this is also something I have to tell you, this works for all ages. Even if you are 75 years old, you can have some profit from it. So you use your brain throughout the training. Wait a moment, because again, there was something. Okay. So the central idea is act faster and think faster. That's what we will show through the practice. To give you a very good visualized idea, we start with a cross. In the cross, there's also a diamond. A diamond consists out of different triangles. Then we go to 4 squares, and finally we put our drills in a pitch organized through grids. This will empower recognition. You will see, according to the age, we will go from 9 to 25 grids. Okay, to give you an idea, the logical organized drills, drill structures are here, that are actually also our retrieval structures. And according to the age, for children 6 till 9, 9 grids, and 15 grids for the age 10 till 13. Today also, the position of the goalkeeper, the functioning of the goalkeeper is different. He is not only a goalkeeper, but he is also a field player. So we also make him understand that a number of grids belong to his activity. And this was the organization for children from 10 till 13. To show you that the connection with the game is there from the first moment, I take away the center cone. I replace 2 of the outer cones by 2 goals, and we are immediately in a small pitch with 4 squares. So this is a visual reorganization, and this proves that we go from the drills to structured games. And what is the meaning of that? Well, it will connect what we are doing with what is called contextual interference. I will explain more later on. Now we go to the first exercise. Every exercise we organize, we first determine the parameters of these drills. Well, in the exercise I'm going to show you, you will see that there is a synchronous use of time and space. I pay attention to attention and concentration, conscious movement in space, high reactivity, fast rotational movements, rapid directional changes. They have to maintain speed after change of direction. Their action poster in the start has to be there. You see the 2 didactical principles, AD and autonomous learning, are present. Correct decision-making, split vision, and always reposition immediately. And it's all connected with the keyword focus. So in this drill, what's going to happen? The coach who is assisting me, when he raises one arm, the player has to make a turn of 180 degrees. And if you look at the right side, you see the cross. So the player starts from the cone at the outside, at the right side of the X. he starts running, and he has to imagine that next to him at the left, there is an opponent. So this is an imaged opponent at the left of him. So raising one arm, a turn of 180 degrees, raising two arms horizontally, then he has to change from the right position of the X to the left. So he will change his pathway. He goes from running at the right to running at the left. So change of direction vertically. Other movements means no action. I'll give you an idea. Look. Changing. X. Now look. One. Now turn. Yes. So always focus. And he can combine different movements. Huh? Now nothing's happening. So they have to endure the coach's arm movements that are not connected with the requested movements. Huh? And this means cognitive readiness, focus. And we also call this conscious movement, not running in an automated way. No, always stay focused. Okay, what mistake did one of the players make? Now I'll give you the picture. You see, he was at the left and he had to make a turn of 180 degrees, and he did it to the inside. So he turned to the opponent. And that is the moment we will correct him. We will tell him, watch out, try to preserve the advantage of space. Second exercise, again, the parameters, synchronicity, external focus, always screen the environment, conscious movement in space, use your forefoot, cross coordination, jump upwards on 2 feet, moving laterally, fast situational adaptability, memorizing, constant thinking and no single focus. Watch out for inattentional blindness, because that's also important. The reason why we organize our drills in this way is to be sure that everyone focuses on the same things. If you organize it in a global way, you do not know where the player puts his focus on. Here, we want to be sure that they put their focus on the same details, orientation capacity and visualizing.
Red, forward, backward. Blue, sideways. Yellow, jump. And white is actually green. Here you have to think differently. Imagine the white as green. And green is the crossed jump.
Okay, we'll show you. This is the... Wait a moment, he's not doing what I expected to do. 1 second.
Red, forward, backward. Blue, sideways. Yellow, jump. And white is actually green. Here you have to think differently. Imagine the white as green. And green is the crossed jump.
It's weird, but normally the videos at the bottom have to show us what they have to do. Blue, forward, backwards, no, sidewards, sorry, forward, backwards, jumping, and the crosswise jumping as well. Something weird. I do not understand what's happening. Here, I think it will be visual. Now you see that the trainer in the middle indicates the color with his feet. So when he goes to red, they have to perform the drill connected with the color. And as I already said, remember white is green. When he goes with his foot to green or to white, sorry, they have to know, they have to rethink, oh, this means green, and green is connected with a particular drill. Now, here you can see all the players are performing the same drill, so they can check through the others what they have to do. But this is something we know before we set up the organization. Now, they have to apply the drills independently. So I've put, to make it more visible, I've put the colored small cones a little bit more clearly. But now, and this is important, those cones are organized in a different way for all the players. So the order is never the same. Now it's up to them to connect the color to the correct movement. And what are they doing right now? They are testing themselves, or they are testing themselves their memory, because they have to prove they can memorize the drill. Here we only do it with 4 colors. Normally in our academy we go from 4 to 6, 8, 10, 12 different drills. We combine colors, we do it in different ways, but testing yourself is learning. The skills that are taught must be stored in the long-term memory. Usually a skill is only stored in the short-term memory via many repetitions. Then the focus goes down. If players have to make an effort to remember a movement, the learning process is greatly strengthened and they start storing everything better in memory. Forgetting and remembering are an excellent weapon to strengthen learning. And to make it harder, I already said, we use more combinations. Now, what were the mistakes? If we this is weird. Normally, I will try it again. Give me 1 second. I will go out of it and try it again. It's weird because it was working. Otherwise, I'll show it in this way. I don't know what's happening, but so I'll explain you. This boy was, when he had to move in a sideways way, he was actually jumping from right to left and he came back from left to right. So he was not moving in a lateral or in a sideways way, foot by foot, step by step. No, he was jumping. This explains to us that the organization in the brain is not correct. In the other small video, so they have to jump and to move their arms and legs at the same time. We saw many times that when the left foot was forward, the left arm was following. This means that they do not perform the jump in a crosswise way. The moment that left foot and left arm goes forward together, again, they are not well organized in their brain. And that's very important because if they are missing that coordination or the lateralization in the brain, this can have a tremendous influence on learning. Okay, let's see. Okay, then the ball mastery. The first exercise, the parameters, again, synchronous moving, body always between ball and opponent, lots of ball contacts outside foot, turning with ball outside foot, turning with inside foot, step over, ball behind support foot, directional changes, use balls in different sizes, constant thinking, orientation, capacity, and memorizing. Okay, so we have 4 skills. We give them a name. Belgium is turning inside foot. Germany is turning outside foot. France, step over, right foot. And finally, Italy, the ball behind support foot. And always check that your body is in between the ball and the opponent. This adds cognitive load. I can use the names of the countries, or I can replace the country by the capitals: Brussels, Berlin, Paris, Rome. Okay. Look now. It's the coach who shouts the names of the countries or the capitals. So this means they have to prove they stay concentrated. And there's another thing in it. If the coach shouts the name of a country that is not in the drill, yes, they simply, that's what I'm explaining. They simply have to, they have to dribble to the center cone and change the ball, because football is unpredictable. And I also make them aware of the fact their body has to be between the ball and the opponent. Now, here, same principle. We start with 4 skills, but we can go to 6, 8, 10. And you will not believe me, but in the Elite Academy that delivered many professional players, we go to 28 combinations. And do not think this is difficult, because our brain makes it possible. We can do that.
Ik ga daar lopen en ik ga hier mee lopen. Dan zie je hoe je je lichaam moet gebruiken.
Now, because many of them, they did not protect enough the ball, I run next to the player to make him understand, watch out, you always have to cover your ball to protect your ball. Immediate feedback. Okay. Okay, embodied cognition, and that's the explanation. Moving strengthens thinking, and thinking strengthens moving. So a thought is part of a thought process or an action process. A thought can be deliberately used to provoke an action linked to concentration. So for many years, we didn't know that. Actually, when we are moving, we always use 3 things at the same time. You have biomechanical activity, you have cognition, so you're thinking, and emotion. It is always there. You can never do something without those 3 elements. Second exercise, parameters, synchronous use of time and space. Body always between ball and opponent, lots of ball contacts, outside foot, quick change of feet. The pass foot becomes the run foot, correct timing, present yourself while moving to receive a pass, oriented passing, quick position change, constant thinking, orientation capacity, and visualizing. Here I give you an idea. They start dribbling, they pass the cone in the middle, turn, and then there is an upcoming player and they have to play the ball to the supporting player. This means this is a give and go, and then they change position. I will repeat it again, then you can see it. Dribbling, right foot, pass the middle cone, turn, play with the left foot, accelerate, receive the ball again, and change position. Do not underestimate this, because this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different things they have to memorize. So the dribble, the turning, the passing, the acceleration, and then receiving the ball and changing position are the different elements in this drill.
En wissel. Nu zijn we vertrokken. Kom maar. Hop, hop, hop. Dribbel, 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 dribbel. Hop. Hop. Naast hem door. Tik. Dribbel. Kom aan, kom aan, kom aan, kom aan. Hop. Hop. Tik. Tik. Blijven bewegen. Kom aan. Dribbel, dribbel. Zet er druk op. Hop. 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 Het is altijd kijken, altijd kijken. Dribbel, dribbel, dribbel. Kom aan, gaan. Hop. Hop. Doe maar, je mag fouten maken. Probeer het mee op te lossen. Tik. tik. Come on, snelheid, open, tik. Hop, naast hem door, tik, spelen. Controle, paswissel, go, hop, tik, tik, tik.
So you saw, starting with the ball from the right side of the cone at the outside, and what's important, you can never drop your concentration, because every time you change from one task to another, and you have to be in the rhythm of the performance. I know this is mentally very hard, but this is the way you are going to learn them to speed up their decision making and their actions. So now what you saw, now we are not going to explain a lot. Hold on a second. The player who has the ball is going to stand on the left side and the supporting player on the right. We are going to see if you can mix this. Now we are going to have to think differently in space. A few remarks. Remember, when you play the ball, we are now leaving from the left. You're going to turn beyond the middle cone again, and then you're going to play the ball to your supporting player. Next, you're going to play the pass with your right foot. Why? If you were to use your left foot, you're going to need 3 times to give the pass and to let follow your running action. If you play with the right foot, your pass foot immediately becomes your running foot, and you only need 2 times. If you use 3 times, you give an opponent more time to put pressure on you. Also remember, you have to accelerate when you pass the upcoming player, and you are not going to follow the ball. The supporting player presents himself in motion in the middle of the square and plays the ball while turning open. Oriented pass. Let's try it. Be aware of the fact this is now from a different perception. So I explained all that because performing from left to right, they normally have to find the solutions themselves. But the fact they are not used to do that, I had to help them a little bit. But normally, after some time, we always first explain from right to left. So we first use the explicit direct instruction, and then we go to the left, so from left to right, to make it possible they can find a solution themselves. And again, I have to emphasize, players can make mistakes. Here you can see it in a different way, and you will see that they are going to make mistakes or errors. They are at the left. And now look what's happening here. You saw 2 players moving to the same position. And again, yes, he has to check where is the other player. They turn. So it's every time full focus, full concentration. So it's normal they make mistakes. We correct the mistakes or the errors. We give immediate feedback. And the MBM framework, through which technical skills, positional awareness, interplay in time and space are clearly combined. And another thing in it is using smaller ball sizes. So we go to differential learning. Then with drone, to give you an idea, what influenced the speed has now on the performance. So, and here I can check the timing of the players. Do they arrive at the correct moment in the middle? Are they in the same team rhythm, or are there a number of them struggling with their concentration? It's explained by the fact that when you act faster, you think faster. Slowly thinking means slowly moving. Then now we put the whole organization or the drill in a smaller space. This means less time, faster thinking, and above all, thinking in advance, and a smaller ball size. And that is related with, so the left one, you can see the shorter distances. At the right, they are using the smaller balls. This is actually related with what we call contextual interference. It is more effective to make a lot of variation during practice so that the player always has to deal with new situations and have to plan and execute every move again. But now the question is, how much variation is optimal? Can you go on varying? You can do it if they are actually controlling most of the contents. And thus the optimal variation depends on the skill level of the athlete. Absolutely. If your athletes struggle a lot with technical skills, with the influence of space and time, you have to use a lower number of variations. An association, because that's also in it. Yes,
Michel. So
yes.
We're coming up. We're on 1 hour already.
Yeah.
And I know you have, how many slides do you think are left?
I think
about
4, not more. We are at the end.
Okay, so let's go through the next 4, and then I'm sure that we have lots of questions. So I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to see how much more. Okay, so we have 4 more slides, 4 or 5 more slides left. So let's hold the questions until you get to the end. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay, again, a number of parameters, accurate and powerful fitting, then oriented control, quick directional changes, make the defender move, quick decisions, slow down and accelerate to break free from the opponent. Scoring with the inside foot, defender is only allowed to intercept the shot, stays 2 meters away. Goalkeeper must communicate with defender, creative dribbling, scoring. So this is the end part. Now we go into what is called a structured game. So the defenders can only shield the pathway to the goals, and the attacker tries to score. Here you can see it. But now I go back to the drills I already used. So the coach is shouting Belgium, Germany, France, Italy. So the cognitive influence is there. That means that the player must constantly think, make decisions, link to time and space, and deal with pressing opponent. Scoring after the trainer call go. So when I score go, he can score. And here you will see it in an even better way. Free yourself. I don't know what's happening because, wait a moment. It's weird, but it's actually the same. Now we go to the end. Structured games, we can enrich the working zone. This means that we make it more complicated to perform the drills. We use effort-based reward. This means when I shout freeze, the defender, the shielding defender has to stop 2 times, and the attacker has to change direction and score. But it's to give them the opportunity to score a goal and to have a reward. And then we can also add other things. But actually, I think this will still work. Here you can see it. Look, the part at the bottom is now full of cones, and it makes it more complicated in combination with the names of the countries to perform the drill. And that's it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, I'll tell you, this is some big, serious information here, and I'm sure, I hope that we have some questions from the panel. We've got about 50 people, coaches that are on. So if you want to ask a question, please either raise your hand in the chat mode or put a question in the chat, or just kind of open it up, please.
There's a few in the chat right now, Tom.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, go ahead. So let me see.
Sanjeev, do you want to come on and ask questions?
I always got questions. Yeah, I'm interested in the screening of the brain. I know you talked about at the beginning. How do we, what kind of exercises do we present to screen? And then what do we actually look for when we're screening?
Yeah, we want to be sure that it's quite logical. Till the age of 8, 9 years old, the lateralization of many children is not there. Normally, at the age of 8, they have to be lateralized, but through the influences of the technology, this is going slower. And what we want to be sure of is the cross laterals, because to give an idea, if you want to organize the brain in a correct way, well, when you are still a baby and you are in the crawling phase, actually all those crosswise movements organize your brain. Because through research, we know if a baby did not have the crawling phase, so running on his feet and hands, it can have learning problems at the age of 7, 8 years old. So that's important. So we want to be sure that the body is organized in a correct way, and the body is actually the expression of the brain. And that's the reason we do it. I can ask a child to squeeze my hand. So imagine I ask a boy of 7, 8 years old. He is right-handed, to squeeze my right hand. Then I will check what's happening with the fingers of his left hand. When those fingers are moving, this means that the brain is not fully organized. Now, all those influences, and we have a whole set of tests, all those influences will, if the child is already ready to learn. Now, do not think this is a problem, because within a period of 6 weeks, we deliver the solution. Those problems are gone. But we do this continuously. And we also concentrate on balance. We let them pass some tests regarding balance, stability, because too many times we find out if they only use one foot, they actually change the position of the pelvis. And we never knew that if, to give you an idea, you continuously play with your right foot, this means your pelvis goes down at the right side, but this also influences your perception. So the development of your perception will be stronger in one angle, from right to left. But if you go from left to right, through the changes in your body, your perception goes down or slows down. That's the explanation.
Well, so that's a big time explanation, man, to the question. Yes, Paul, we have some other questions here in the chat.
We do. Well, another from Sanjeev, and then we can go on a couple more, but do you progress if the athletes are struggling to understand? What is the optimal time to allow for memorization or progression? Oh, like for instance, Michel, yeah, those boys that you worked with in the videos there, how many times did you work with them before that video was shot?
Never. It was the first time. I only saw them once. But I have to be honest, look, these are boys, they belong to the club I'm working with. So a part of what they had to do, they already are used to do it. But it's unbelievable. We also organized some tests at the bottom of Belgian football in grassroots. The only difference is if you start doing this with children that gives you the impression that they are less skilled, it takes a little bit of time. But once they go into the structure, you actually have a tremendous influence on the brain functioning. And that's the key. The program for us is not the most important. First, we want to be sure that the processing in the brain is happening. And we have some evidence after, actually in brain science, they tell us, they call it the synaptogenesis phase. It takes 6 weeks to have an influence on the brain plasticity. So after 6 weeks, I also did it in Canada. A lot of coaches cannot believe what's changing, but it's quite logical, because before you go to what you expect to do in the program, you first actually organize the processor of the brain, and that is the key.
Thank you, Michel. I have another question here from Santiago. Santiago, do you want to ask him yourself? Do you want me to ask him for you?
Sure, Paul. Michelle, thank you for the presentation. Basically, my second question is kind of related to Sanjeev's second question as well, and it has to do with, obviously the cognitive skills are improved with these drills, but is there a way that you guys actually measure that?
Absolutely, because what we do, we check how many things they can memorize. Because watch out, there is more and more evidence. The influence of the working memory is very big, but your working memory is only there for 3-4 seconds. Now, what's important? It is important for us that we do not rely on the working memory, because the working memory means that what they are doing is only delivering some results in the training session itself. If you want to recall the knowledge, you have to go to the long-term memory, and that's that's the reason you saw the association when I first showed the passing, so dribbling, turning, passing, and then at the end I added 2 goals. Well, what we are doing, we are continuously adding more elements to the drill, and what I do, to give you an idea, when they memorize the structure of the drill, and I start with 4 or 5 or 6 elements, after a few weeks, I go to 8 to 10 parts, and then I can check, is the knowledge going into the long-term memory? That is actually the key. And that's the reason why I said, but now, look, it is related to the environment. If you can work with children that come out of a rich environment, that are already influenced in an early stage by the family, by the parents, what Tom is actually doing, you actually can work with children that are prepared in a better way to be part of elite training sessions. And then it is unbelievable. I can go to 20, 24, 28 different things. But this is proven through science, because we didn't know that we can actually, through chunking, through a number of strategies, we can open the long-term memory in a better way. And that's important, because the big stars confirm to us, the more solutions they have in their brain, the better their decision-making will be. And when I do it with technical skills, the cognitive load empowers actually the motor functioning. This is proving, because whatever you do with your body, it's always connected with your brain. And Tom knows this as well, because it's also a principle explained by Professor John Ratey. The cerebellum, we thought for many years that the cerebellum was only influencing our motor activities. Now we know that through the cerebellum, we also have an influence on attention, concentration, and memory. And this is, to give you a last example, when you start teaching your children, first, when they are in the first stage, they will use the working memory, the motor cortex, and the cerebellum to pick up your drill. But if the working memory stays in it, they will never go to a high-speed performance. So we have to kick the working memory out. So it has to be the loop, cerebellum, motor cortex. And that's what we are doing. And that's the reason, to give you a solution, we actually fill the working memory with cognitive information so that the working memory cannot be involved with the movement. Or to give another solution, we ask the player to squeeze a little ball. So you give him a little ball, can also be a tennis ball. He has to hold it in his left hand. And while he is performing, he has to squeeze the ball. Now, this information also goes to the cerebellum. So I do this if they have to do something more relying on the right part of the cerebellum. I use the left hand. If I want to do it the other way around, I ask them to hold the ball in the right hand. Last thing, what I'm explaining, I'm not only doing this in football. 3 years ago, I started with a young girl in Belgium in tennis. Today, she is Belgian champion. She comes now to Florida because she is winning. She is 11 years old. She is winning all her games against boys and girls in Europe, one year older. The same strategies, cognitive load, retrieval structures. Actually, all the things I've been explaining, we also put it in a training session of tennis. I know but this is what science makes us understand.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely, man. I mean, the reality is, as I always say, that football hasn't caught up to what science already knows.
Yeah.
And that is that skill acquisition happens much earlier than they suppose it. And I say, like, the coach's education has been like, almost half a century, 50, 60 years ago, coming from England, Germany, Holland. And they focus only on systems, tactics, formations, because they never thought there was a technical deficit. Because, of course, kids play in the street, football starts at home. And the reality is that this has been exported to so many countries, which is, for me, kind of a failed coaching model for most countries that think that it's all about the kind of the elite side, right? And I always say, as you might, you've heard me say, but the best countries in the world, they win the battle at the entry level, and the rest of the world thinks that the battle's at the elite level. So they put so much money in the elite level, but a strategy with the absence of culture gets you, not so far. So
you're fully right, Tom, because there is now overwhelming information regarding the period you can train children before they go to the entry level. And this is correct, because we always thought, okay, they go to a club, it is technical training sessions, but we forgot one thing. We first have to give them the opportunity to train themselves without pressure. And the mental influence is enormously important, because if a child can freely prepare itself to master a ball, it will arrive in the part of working with programs in a different way. Because it's not only in football. You can check it, Hart and Riley in the States, for instance, if you put a child in a rich environment, people using very good vocabulary, well, when that child goes to school, it will learn better. It's the same with what Tom is doing. And what a lot of people didn't know, because in the kindergartens, they concentrated a lot on the hands, what Tom is doing, and this is what Professor Rati is also confirming. Use your hands and feet, because bringing in the feet will even empower the learning process of the child.
Exactly.
And this is
and even I started out with the quote from Arsene Wenger, and I'm looking at my iPhone here, right? He says, Arsene Wenger on the future of football, the next step is to train the player's brain, which is important, of course, but he's talking about the very, very top elite players.
Yeah.
So What I'm worried about is that many grassroots coaches watch this and they read that and they talk about training the brain. And the reality is most kids can't transfer the ball from the right foot to the left. And we have this major problem in America where 38.5% of kids who play football or soccer, they quit by the age of 7, and then 50% quit by the age of 10.
Yeah.
So although Arsene Wenger's true about what's happening at the top level, but that's the very, very, very tiny percent of football.
Yeah, so that's correct.
We have another question. Everett, you have a good question.
Some more questions? Let's go.
Yes, okay.
Everett, do you want to jump on?
Yeah, I had a question about that type of training. With what ages do you start? Like, for example, with a 5-year-old, you would of course simplify it, but how much do you simplify it to not lose that, that subject of training?
Or we start doing this with very young kids, 3 or 4 things we combine, but every time it's checking if they are ready to do all that. But there is something else in the background. What Tom was explaining, most of the kids we are working with, we first put them in a program, or we first try to convince the parents to prepare the kids. What Tom is doing, I'm also the author of the SenseBall. What I do before they join us in training sessions, we make it possible. They have a lot of individual training sessions using a SenseBall. Why? Because that's based on brain timing. Actually, when I developed about 20 years ago the SenseBall program, it was matching with what happened in the United States, the interactive metronome system. And what is the explanation? Well, when you follow a metronome, you actually make it easier, you facilitate the functioning of the brain. So first we start very slowly, and with the SenseBall drills, we will try within a period of 6 weeks to organize the brain to be ready to step into our training sessions. We use music. We make them aware of the influence of rhythm, because rhythm is enormously important in motor learning. And that explains, once the brain timing is there, and you can check it yourself, go to the website of the interactive metronome system. They will tell you that what I already said, all your motor functions and all your cognitive functions, whatever you are doing, is connected with brain timing. And now there has been an exciting discovery. We have a metronome neuron in our brain. We didn't know that. And that's the reason why we can influence a lot better the performance of kids, not only in soccer, but also at school. Because I fully agree with Tom. Do not think, okay, I've worked with many professional players, but I care much more about other children having learning problems, and children who play football in the grassroots. But the big surprise is, if they step into our programs, some weird things are happening. They close actually the gap with the elite players. That's something I could prove, and yeah, that's today one of the big questions. Are we still going on creating an upper class and a lower class? Because what science tells us today, this is not completely right. There are still some differences, but through neuroscience, we can reduce the difference. Yeah. And that's important for me, because for me, if you can make children a little bit more equal to each other, I think we will have less problems.
And then, can I have another question?
Yeah,
sure.
So what about if a kid has a learning disorder, for example, on a younger age, they have HDAD, or just a, trouble in focusing, because the training is, it's focusing on different words and letters and numbers, but if a kid is troubling focusing on the younger age, do whatever the reason is, how would you help a kid like that?
Oh, that is something I love to do, and there we have a solution, a remarkable solution, because I'm also working with kids having ADHD and non-verbal learning disorders, dyslexia, all those things. But you know, the key is when you saw the cross, the synchronization is the key. Also, when you start with very, very young kids, you ask them to start running, and in the middle, at the height of the center cone, they have to show they reach the center cone at the same time. This is actually using the image of space to make them understand that they have to respect timing. But timing is always connected with space, because when he's too late, it will be visual. Now, what is the power of synchronization? Kids learn together. This is social neurology. So what will happen? They will help each other. And this is what children need. You can always go back to the problem of a child, or you can make it possible that the children together will help the child with the problem. So I asked them, wait, and after a few performances, you will see how it changes. And then, this is important, they call it the biology of conviction. When the child sees that something is changing, well, then you go into the brain, because the brain is not only influencing the mechanism in the brain, because it's regarding learning problems, that's not so simple to explain. It can be explained by the fact that the mirror neurons are not functioning, that that other parts of the brain are not reacting in a correct way. But you can change that through synchronization. And then again, I go back what I did with many children having learning problems. We use brain timing. So we let them swing a ball, and at first it's not kicking the ball. They simply, when they swing the ball to the right, they have to put their left foot forward. When the ball comes back, backwards. So we make them understand, and that's also related with executive functioning, inhibition. When do you have to do something? So when you swing the ball to the right, then the left space is open, put your left foot forward. When the ball comes back, put your foot backwards. Once the brain picks up this mechanism and it's visualized, after some time you will see they change completely. And I've worked with, that's a big part of my job. We help children with learning problems, but there's also always something in the background that we did not understand very well. It's the mental part of it, the self-esteem, self-belief, the fact that the child can experience something successful is important. Because it's not only correcting a number of mechanisms in the brain, it has to be empowered by the mental activity in the brain, and that works in a fantastic way. I advise you again, read Limitless Brain, and I think you will come back to me, because then you will understand. It's the same. Look, I think you all know that already. If I step into a classroom, and I'm the teacher of mathematics, and I start telling my pupils, my students, oh, you're all poor. If I repeat this message 5 times, I will never have good results. And you can read it in the book of Jo Bohler, when she tells us, okay, it also goes about how can we penetrate the brain to change, to help children. And then something weird happened. She did it with children struggling with mathematics. And okay, it started changing. But at the end of the school year, she asked the teachers You are not only going to tell them where they are today, but I would like you to add one message. You know what the teachers had to write on the report? They added the words, "I believe in you." You can read it in the book. The next school year, the results were unbelievable. The mental influence can change a human being completely. And it's explained, there is a scientific explanation for all that. Placebo influences, if they give you something, if they ask you to take a pill and they make you believe that it will cure you, weird things are happening. So this is something more and more we begin to understand all that. But what I do, I put it in moving programs. And to tell you one more thing, if you have children struggling with those problems, please keep them in aerobic movements. This means if they do not leave the aerobic zone, this means that they will bring enough oxygen to the brain. Then a number of things are happening. First, they produce what is called BDNF. BDNF is the fertilizer of the brain. As long as you are doing all that, you can have a fantastic influence on the development of the child. At the same time, you actually block GABA. GABA is a stuff that shuts down the plasticity of the brain. When someone is having problems in one of the parts of the brain, through plasticity, and it's one of the American scientists, I think it was Bruynnikx, together with Bahirita, it was Bruynnikx who discovered the plasticity of the brain. But when you stay in the aerobic zone, you make it possible that you can use full 100% the plasticity of the brain, because you through the oxygen, you actually eliminate the influence of GABA. But those are things, that's the reason why they tell us, first, they have to learn slowly. We all thought immediately action. I know I was many times in the States, scrimmages. Recently, there was an enormous important talk on one on the American. It was actually on one of the broadcasting companies, a famous neurologist, and he explains, watch out for sensation, excitement, because if you bring a child in a situation that there is sensation and too much excitement, it can really block all learning.
Yeah, Michel. So listen, I think we might have a few, Paul, we might have a few more questions. And if not, let me see here in the chat mode, because Michel can talk forever because he's got so much information.
That's my job.
It is. We're not.
Fantastic stuff, Michel. No, it's great. We could be with you here for 3 hours, no problem.
Yeah.
It's
Exactly.
really, really interesting and fascinating, and definitely, for me, I took a couple pages of notes right here on things that I'm interested in. But that working memory and the long-term memory is really interesting, right?
Yeah.
And trying to get as much out of the working memory,
Yeah,
into the long-term memory. That seems to be the trick, and why. Doing this stuff at a very, very early age, where the kids, when soccer starts at home and they're beginning to master the ball and use the right foot, left foot, the bottom of the foot, and they do this early and early. And it seems to me it organizes the brain. And you've said that a bunch of times. It's like the first thing you're really, really doing is organizing the brain.
Yeah.
Right.
That's good.
And by organizing the brain earlier, you're just going to be more efficient for the long term. So
Absolutely.
it's really fascinating stuff, and I hope I know I learned a lot, took a lot out of this. So we definitely need to get you back on a round 2 of this for sure.
I can do it, and I want to share all that because I cannot do it alone. I simply have to inspire people, and they have to be critical, because that's the only way we will learn together and we will change the world. it's not one person. It's not Michel Bruyninckx who is important. It goes about how more insights we can pick up and integrate in our training sessions in favor of children. That is the most important message.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then, just to round it out, I mean, Michel, you've given us like incredible information. And like I started out with Arsene Wenger saying that the future of football is on the brain side, and that's the kind of the elite side, of course. But, when you look at the technical side, I mean, we've exploited as best we can, shining the spotlight on becoming better technically, individually. But the future is really kind of, how to use the brain, how to use the space, how do you use the kind of cognitive side of football. And you are on the cutting edge of that. You're on the cutting edge of that. And that's why even the German Federation and all the different federations in Europe are turning to you for this kind of consultation. So we really appreciate and thank you for sharing this information to our partners in development here in Houston. And we hope to have you back again soon.
Okay, no problem. And for me, it was an honor, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. And there was a small technical problem. I don't know how it happened.
No. Everything was good. And as my one of my Dutch friends says, is that there's many roads that lead to Rome, right? So I don't have the panacea. We don't know, but we're trying to just give as much information to all of our colleagues here online, and kind of take some kind of information here, there, everywhere, and try to make their their coaching scheme and their philosophy and their methodology better than it was yesterday.
Okay, that's it. I can only add one thing. There is an MBM Academy in New York.
Yeah.
And you can check it. The results are remarkable.
Wow, great.
And that's the reason that people in Virginia also are using the ideas. They say, but how is this possible? It has got nothing to do with me. It's simply, trying to understand in a better way.
But Michel, even with you, is there some kind of website or social network that people can find you on? Say it right now.
I have a website, but the problem is we are reorganizing.
Okay.
Because what's happening today, I have to put it in so many languages. And to be honest, this is a webinar, but if I could present it on the pitch, you saw it in Lugano, it works even stronger. After 10 minutes, you will really connect to us, because we make it possible. You see it with your own eyes, and you can see the changes in the children. And that's a problem.
Is there some website we can drive people to, the Michel Bruyninckx website?
I will put it in or I can send it to Paul. Yeah. You can actually have www.mbmethod.be some videos, and also what I'm doing in the school system.
Okay.
So when you go to projects, there are a number of videos how we, because I got a question regarding learning problems, how we have interventions in the school environment.
Okay, great.
And I work together with the university. So now we are concentrating on the girl in tennis. But through COVID, we had to stop our project. But next school year, there will be again 5-6 master theses, research for master thesis on the children at school.
All right.
But I think I can put it in the chat, and then I hope so.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you again on behalf of the Houston Dynamo, the partners in development, and just everybody watching. We had a very good turnout, about more than 50 coaches, and thank you for your great experience and expertise, and look forward to following up.
Okay, it was a nice.
Thank you, Michel.
You're welcome.
Thank you everyone for joining us. That was great.
And have a great day today. And you a good night's sleep, Tom.
All right, thanks, bro. All right,
Yeah.
bye-bye.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Michel. Have a good day.
Bye.
Dank u wel, Michel. Dank je.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Michel.